Hi, and welcome to the Window Film Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Driscoll, and I'm excited to be joined today by Patric Fransko, founder of the digital marketing agency iMagnet Management and founder of Window Film Pros. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vinny. Man, I'm psyched to be here, man. I've been watching the previous episodes and I'm excited to be part of it.
I am too. You and I met at SEMA last year. I was brand new to the industry. I think I was in the industry for a month or two. I met you at SEMA, and you and I did a live stream together. I did a live stream for the Window Phone page. That was the first time that I had done a live stream for the business. And
Awesome.
I got your card, and I was like, you know what? I got to have a conversation with Patrick eventually because I knew I was going to be getting my own podcast. But here we are today. It's a year later. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I've learned a lot about you just from some of the stuff that we've had written, about you on our website. Some of the stuff you're doing in the industry, obviously with Window Film Pros. So I really kind of wanted to take 30 minutes, 45 minutes, really talk about you, your past, your involvement in window film. So can you just take like a few minutes and just tell me, a little bit about who you are and your involvement in this industry?
Sure. Well, again, I've been in the industry now for 26 years, which is hard for me to believe. I came from the cycling industry prior to being in this industry, and I spent my first 6 years out of high school in the Navy. So I worked on jets on an aircraft carrier flight deck for a bunch of years before I even went to college, and then ended up years later. Just a quick cross section. A guy by the name of George Lewis, who was one of the pioneers of the industry, had owned a bike shop in addition to a window film distributor, and I was actually his rep for his bike shop.
Okay.
So I met him through that. I didn't know window film from saran wrap. I literally didn't know anything about window film, but he really enjoyed working with me on the cycling side and said, "Hey, if you ever decide to leave cycling, I could teach you window film. I'd really like you to be part of my company." And that's how I ended up in this industry. I literally had zero ties to the industry other than the fact that I met George Lewis, who owned a bike shop at the time, and he also owned the what was at that time CP Films, Lumar, Vista, Formula One. He owned that distributorship for the Midwest, and I went to
Okay.
work for that company. It was called Performance Films Distributing.
Okay. So no ties to the industry growing up. I mean, I talked to a lot of installers, and a lot of them it's sort of generational. They're born into the industry, they grow up with it. You're not one of those people. You went to the Navy, then you worked with the bike shop, and then you sort of kind of met somebody who got you into this
Yep.
industry. So that's kind of how it played out. Now you've
Yeah.
been in
Other
the
than
industry.
having maybe a car or two tinted prior to meeting George, I didn't know anything about window tint. In
Okay.
fact, I'm not even sure that I knew anything about the process of the people that tinted my cars, other than I just drove up and dropped off my car and got
Right.
it tinted.
Right. Yeah, me neither. Joining this industry last year, I had very little, knowledge of how much went into this industry, other than, like you said, getting my car tinted. I even tried to, do it myself with a friend back in the 80s. Didn't go so well, obviously.
Yeah.
But to me, I didn't know much about the industry. So right now, you have a digital marketing agency called iMagnet Management. Now, can you tell me a little bit about that? How did you get involved in bringing a digital marketing agency to the industry?
Sure. Well, in my variety of roles in the industry, the last one, I was running the 3M distribution center on the West Coast for it was privately owned, but it was a 3M independent distribution center called Service Group Distributing that serviced Washington, Oregon, and California. The decision was made to merge that with what is now Interwest, which I'm sure you've
Okay.
heard of Interwest. And at the time, Hugh Bernardi Jr. was sort of running that, and they wanted me to be part of that team, but they really didn't need two CEOs, if you will. So I was my specialty was in sales and marketing. So I took the role of chief marketing officer of this new entity that now included the West Coast and what Interwest typically covered. As part of that process, I interviewed our top 50 customers in our
Okay.
entire territory and talked to them about marketing and what they were looking for and their challenges and things like that. And I learned a lot during that process. And one of the things I learned was that, although they understood the need for certain digital marketing, they didn't really know where to go. And they were so busy running their businesses that, that they didn't really have time to dedicate to it.
Okay.
So I decided, and worse yet, some of them had worked with other marketing agencies that didn't understand the industry, and either they wasted a lot of money or they took advantage of them because they really didn't know. So I made the decision after being in that role for about 18 months to resign from Interwest and launch iMagnet Management, specifically to bring digital marketing services to the window film industry.
Sure. Sure. And how long have you had the agency?
This last April was its 10-year anniversary.
Awesome. So you do most of your work, if not all of it, with window film companies? Is that correct?
I would say it's about 80% of our work, just by nature of what we do. Certain people tell other people about us, and we have attorneys as clients. We have, we have hair salons as clients. We have a decent number of clients outside the industry, but if I had to break it down, I'd say 75 to 80% of it is specific to the window film industry.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what you do for, say, a window film business in terms of the marketing.
Well, we actually do everything. I say we're a full service digital shop. By that, I mean we do everything from building websites, modifying existing websites, doing search engine optimization on those websites. We also can do things like run ads for Google AdWords, like pay-per-click ads. We can run social media ads. We can manage content creation, like blogs on their website, share those to social media, do paid social media buys. So we can sort of act as a marketing company for a business. Like we can literally do the A to Z, like take them from, making sure their website and their Google business pages are dialed in, all the way to running meta ads and running Google AdWords, if that's what they want to do. So there's really not anything that happens in the form of marketing online that we can't do for our client. We don't touch anything traditional. Like we don't do any brochure design or anything of that nature. It's all digital.
I see.
All online, I should say, just to be clear.
Okay. So you had mentioned that, the most rewarding part of your job is client interaction. Like, what do you learn from those conversations, and how does it influence the way that you market?
I mean, I think, one of the things I approach it with is I try to put myself in the shoes of the client. I say to our clients a lot of times, I will spend your money the same way I would have spent my own money. So I really try to put myself in their shoes and understand what their situation is and what steps we can take to really produce results. Because what I don't want to do is take money from a client and then not produce results. In most cases, these clients, a lot of the people in our industry, if they're choosing to spend a certain amount of money with your agency, it's not like they have stacks of money in the corner. They're expecting if they spend $1,000 that they get some return on that $1,000.
Sure.
So I take spending other people's money very seriously. And when I talk to them, I really want to understand their business. I want to understand how their business operates, what their expectations are. I found that, trying to manage expectations and being clear with making sure we're all on the same page up front really makes sure that things go much smoother. So I like the client interaction just because I'm a people person. I like talking to people. I like working with people. So that part of it, really understanding somebody and their needs, is what I really enjoy. And it's the position I somewhat hold for iMagnet right now, because I've built a team around me that can do most of the mechanics behind the scenes. So now most of my job is just customer or client facing, which I
Right.
really like.
Right. I years ago I used to work in sort of a pseudo agency style marketing in the social media capacity, and I saw what it was like when you don't really talk to the client and ask them what their needs are. You're just taking their money,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I've seen it all too often with even agencies today where they're not really kind of working collaboratively with their clients and trying to find out what it is that they're looking to do. And it's great to
Or
see that
they, or sorry to interrupt, or they're so data driven, which isn't a bad thing per se. But the first question I ask all our clients when I talk to them, I'm like, before I tell you like how the numbers look, like how many impressions you've got, how many clicks you
right,
got, how many, like, tell me how things are going on the
right,
ground in your shop. Because if I
mhm,
wow you with all these numbers, but you're like, man, it's been slow. Well, who cares what all the numbers
right,
are? The only thing that
exactly,
matters is it having a positive impact on your business. Like all the
right,
numbers in the world. And that's where I think a lot of people get caught in the mud. They're like, they don't hear a client where a client's like saying, hey, business is slow. And they're like, well, your impressions are up 10%, your clicks are up 15%, and your click through rate is going up. And you're like, are you not hearing what I'm telling you? My business is slow.
right, right. And I think that's where the conversation has to be more about what the goals are for the client. Like you can kind of like present them with a ton of word salad by saying we can do this, this, and this. Oh, that sounds great. I can get your numbers up here. But if it's not affecting the bottom line, I think that's where some of these agencies kind of trick you into believing that I can get you all this, all these impressions, all this. But if it's not turning into sales, then I think the conversation has to be then again, what are, focus on the goals, and make sure that the client understands that if they have this goal, this is the path towards those goals. And it sounds like you have that, pretty focused with your agency.
Well, and not getting too married to what worked yesterday. I think
Hmm.
that's a super important. In digital marketing, things change every
Right.
day. I
Right.
mean, with AI, it's even changing faster. And that's what I'm going to talk about in my session at WFCT. But things change every day. So as an agency, sometimes, an agency can get caught up with getting too married to what worked yesterday, to where, they're building campaigns, they're doing things that have worked in the past. And
Mhm.
then the client starts telling them it's not working, but they're slow to change because they've got this formula that's worked for them. And they
Right.
keep, where to me, I think one of our strengths as an agency is if a client's telling us something isn't working, I'm happy to be like, okay, well, let's pivot. Like it's
Yeah.
just insanity for us to
Right.
continue spending money doing something that's not working. So let's try something else. Like,
Right.
you can't be married because things change too quick. Google changes an algorithm, Facebook changes something, anything like that, and all of a sudden it's out of your control that all of a sudden something you were doing for SEO that's worked for 5 years all of a sudden doesn't work at all
Right.
anymore.
So how do you stay ahead of trends? Are you constantly kind of staying on top of things in the digital realm where okay, this might be a new social media network, or this is a new trend in email marketing. How do you stay up to date?
I think you have to carve out a certain amount of time per week to look at the horizon and see what's happening. And you also have to dabble in it. One of the big things I'm going to talk about in my session at the show is you've got to start using AI. Like you can't
Hmm.
afford anymore to be on the sidelines watching, even if you're figuring it out. You don't want to wait until you got to get on the train while it's still either stopped or barely moving. You can't wait until the train's going 40 miles an hour and decide that you
Right.
want to jump on that train. So you've got to constantly be trying things. And by nature of that, a certain percentage of that stuff you try is going to be wasted time. But you've got to
Mhm.
like try a bunch of stuff till you figure out what things actually work. And what we do, fortunately, is we, between our own website and between Window Film Pros and things like that, we sort of have a built-in incubator, if you
Mhm.
will. Like we just
Right.
launched something in at the beginning of this year that we're using with a lot of our clients that we tested for 60 to 90 days on our own websites before we even
Oh, okay.
implemented it to them. So we sort of have a built-in incubator to say, okay, this is working the way we thought it would work. Now let's roll it out to our clients.
Nice. So you have like a testing ground where you actually test things out. That's awesome.
Well, one of the, and I'm sure we'll talk about the Window Film Pros consumer side of the business, but one of my goals was to raise consumer awareness for window film. So that's a big task, because we're at least North America wide, we're really pushing. So I'm always trying things to unlock how to get our content in front of more people. And as a byproduct of that, I'm learning things that then I can transfer to help out people on the eye magnet side, because
Okay.
again,
Yeah.
we're doing it. It's not the same thing. We're not marketing window film in a local market to a clientele, but
Mhm.
we're trying to get window film related content out there in front of people. So I'm using all the tools that I come across, and I'm using Window Film Pros as an incubator to say, well, that didn't work, or that
Right.
did
Right.
work. And that, so by the time we take it to our clients, we've already vetted it a little bit,
Okay.
you know?
So that's great. You have your own like kind of staging area where you can kind of test things out. So let's talk about Window Film Pros a little bit. So you launched Window Film Pros how long ago? Can you give us a little bit of background on it?
Yeah. I launched, interestingly enough, I launched the Window Film Pros group on LinkedIn
Right.
first. Because at
Like
the
back in
time,
2008, right? It was a
yeah,
while ago.
so 17 years ago. At the time, Facebook, there was a thing called MySpace, which some people
Yeah.
might not even be aware of now. But
Well, I
and
remember.
Facebook was just starting to make
Yeah.
some traction. They came from kind of more being focused on the college,
Right.
realm, and they started. So when I started Window Film Pros, I started it on LinkedIn because I wanted to create a group for people that were in the window film industry. As Facebook gained traction, I started Window Film Pros in Facebook approximately a year and a half to 2 years after that.
Okay.
Obviously, the Facebook group took off much faster just because people were hanging out there. Where LinkedIn was kind of where people were having to be pretty intentional to go to LinkedIn.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but that's kind of how it started, and it has just sort of continued to grow. We really put some strict rules in from the very beginning that it was going to be a private group, and that everybody we admitted to the group was going to have to, we were going to have to look at their profile, check them out, and make sure they
Right.
were actually part of the industry. So we were very, for many years at Window Film Pros, we turned down more requests to join than we admitted. Like
Sure.
we
Okay.
said no to more people than we said yes to. So we
Okay.
really wanted it to be a safe spot, if you will, for people in the window film industry to come and talk about the industry without feeling like consumers might be looking at it and things like that. Really kind
Right.
of, in some ways, taking what happens at a thing like WFCT or SEMA, where tinners get together and talk, and making that available 365 days a year online.
Right. Right. So you basically wanted to kind of vet it so that you only had the people in the group that you wanted. And I think, you mentioned LinkedIn 2008, different animal than it is today. But Facebook, I think if you want to get an active community going, I think Facebook groups, I've always said this, I've preached this for many years. You're in the right spot. Facebook groups are where it's at, where you want
Yep.
people to go in and have that conversation. And you have a very active community. You have over 11,000 members, I believe it is.
We
You've been,
just, I think we just crossed
yeah.
11,400,
Okay.
which
So,
if you think about how many people are in the industry, there's a lot of people, but you're starting to get to a point of like the minute, like saturation. Like there's
mhm.
not, a group that's really dealing with specifically professionals in the industry probably is never going to have 20,000 members because there's just not 20,000 people.
You're right, right. I agree. I think a lot of people come and go, in the industry. They're in it for 5 years, they leave, but they're still in the group. They
Yep.
don't take the time to exit. I think that's a big problem with, I think, a lot of groups. Facebook's been around now for over 15 years for businesses. Groups have been around a long time. You have a lot of people in a group, but there's a very small percentage of that community actually doing the conversation. So,
It's actually
like,
one of the things I'm most proud about of our group because I look at the analytics all the time. And in many cases, we have 11,400 members. But if I look at the prior 60 days, in many cases, we have, in the range of 8,000 active members in the
that's
prior 60
incredible.
days.
That's
So
pretty
that's
awesome.
one of the stats I'm the most proud of is that we don't just have 500 people that are very, very
Right.
active to create the activity in the group in some way, shape, or form, whether they commented on a post, liked a post, posted something themselves. In a 60-day period, we have basically 8,000 people that have in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form interacted with the group.
That's over 75%. And I think that's an amazing stat. I never would have thought it was that high. Now, given that amount of engagement, um, you definitely I go in there probably a couple times a week and I check it out. You must get a lot of content that needs dealing with in terms of like conversations that probably shouldn't be happening. How much work is vetting and kind of moderating that Facebook group?
It can be, I mean, there's, I'll put it this way: you either do the work up front or you do more work in the back. If you're really diligent about who you let in the group, it eliminates some of the work on
Right,
the backside.
right, right, right.
Um, that being said, I have a lot of really great, experienced, mature moderators, so that
Okay,
obviously you can't be watching it 24/7. So
sure.
we typically are watching it. If somebody's a repeat violator, we put them on post approval. So
Okay,
before we will even let their post go
yeah,
live, we put a set of eyes on it.
sure.
Ideally, we don't want to over moderate. It's kind of a fine line. You don't want to over moderate the group. But if somebody is doing something out of the rules are clearly stated, for the group.
Yep.
If somebody's clearly violating those, we typically will give them a warning, maybe put them on post moderation, delete a post if it's out of line. But ideally, once that happens, hopefully they understand, and then if you address it up front, it gets to be less of an issue.
Okay,
But when you have 11,400 people, there's going to be issues that come up,
sure.
arguments are going to happen. And
Yep.
that's kind of the fine tuning of it, because some of those conversations you want to happen. It's
Hmm.
productive for the industry to hear that conversation, or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
in some cases to hear that argument. So you don't want to over moderate it. And anytime
right,
there's any sort of static at all, you just flush it down the toilet and get rid of
right.
it, because then I think you lose actually some really good information as well.
No, I agree. I agree. I think that over moderating is really bad. The community will turn on you if you over moderate. Because they say, "Hey, I said this, it got deleted. He said that, and it didn't get deleted." So when you over moderate, I think you're kind of teetering on a slippery slope there. But I think a lot of times it'll police itself. Sometimes there are very controversial conversations that'll come up where I'm like, let the audience police this, and a lot of times it will, the ship will be righted. But then again, you do have those conversations where you're just like, there's a lot of profanity, name calling. Then you're like, you got to step in
Well,
and
if somebody's just the nature of their post is to bash either somebody else or to bash a brand or
right,
whatever, it's immediate. Like, I think if somebody's using a window film and they're having issues with it, it's completely in bounds for them to come on and be like, I'm having an issue by the film is doing
right,
this or that, and having that discussion. If the conversation starts with XYZ company is horrible, they
right,
refuse my warranty, like,
yep,
it's like a friend of mine used to say there's three sides to every story: your side,
yep,
the other person's side, and the
the
truth.
truth,
Yeah.
yep.
So, I mean, when somebody comes in with that kind of, energy of, I'm going to basically bash another company. Those are the type of things where it's an easy call to just say we're
Right.
not letting
Right.
that go down.
Because it's in the rules. It'll say
Yeah,
like no bashing, no profanity. This once they violated that, boom, you can
yeah,
say, hey,
and
look, that's in the
again,
rules.
I've had conversations with manufacturers where somebody comes on to vent a little bit about the manufacturer, and I've actually said to manufacturers, you know, I know you're upset about that post, but rather than having me pull it, use this as an
Right.
opportunity to
100%.
actually engage and talk about your side of the situation because
Yep.
people are watching. And sometimes
Yep.
the way you engage is more powerful than an outgoing message from you. Same thing with
Right.
reviews. I talk to clients all the time and they get a negative review and they want me to, what can we do to pull it down? I'm
Hmm.
like, sometimes how you deal with a negative review can be more powerful than 10 positive reviews.
Sure. Sure.
So to me, I really try to say to people, if somebody's coming with productive energy, they're upset about something, a warranty getting declined or whatever, I try to advise some of the window film manufacturers that if I were you, I would engage in that in a productive
Right.
manner and have
Right.
that conversation online because then everybody else that's watching that gets to
Sees it.
see how you handle a
Right.
situation like
And
that.
if you're handling it in a very professional way, even if you're at fault and the customer's right, if you're handling it professionally, publicly, they're going to see that and say, they care. I'm going to use them. Now, going back to the conversation about, the manufacturer, someone's, complaining about that manufacturer. If you're a rep for another manufacturer, there's an opportunity. Like, we talk
Yep.
about this all the time
Yep.
in terms of, social media in a B2B area like this, boom, like there are opportunities all the time for people to go in there and see an unhappy customer and try to pick that up as your own. Now, that I think is a little bit more advanced in terms of using social media for a business because you really have to be on things. You have to know where to be. You have to be, in the conversations. But the opportunity is there, especially in a group that's got 11,000 members.
Yep. I used to. It's funny, part of when I was running the distribution center, I had and was a sales and marketing manager at the prior company. I had a fair number of outside sales reps that I was responsible for. I was their manager, and I used to say to them, I want you to be visiting people, even if they use a different brand. Because I used to say to them, I either want them to be buying from us or I want to be the first phone call they make when their existing supplier messes up. Like,
Right.
to me, even if they're not buying from you, be there helpful. Talk to them about different
Sure.
tips, share information with them. Because one, if you're building a relationship with a current client, you're there was a book many years ago that talked about making emotional deposits,
Hmm.
deposits in the emotional bank account. Everybody's going to screw up. Every manufacturer is going to screw up. Every
Right.
distributor, every business is
Hmm.
going to screw up. If you're making deposits in a client, a customer, a shop's emotional bank account where you're doing good things for them, when that oh crap moment comes up and you have to cover a withdrawal, you
Right.
better have made deposits to cover the withdrawal. Like,
Sure.
and that to me, so I look at it like when people lose business, it's typically not because of that one oh crap moment. It's
Right.
because they weren't making deposits ahead of that to cover that oh
Sure.
crap moment.
Yep. Again, we're talking to Patric Fransko from iMagnet Management. Now, Patric, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about your personal life because I know you've kind of faced a lot of adversity. So you've beaten cancer twice. Let's talk about it. I want to know what cancers you had to face, when you faced them, and how that has changed your outlook on business and life.
Sure. Well, I'll start this by saying, and I hope this isn't, you don't have a problem with this, but before I
No, man.
start, yes, I had two very serious cancers, and I want to thank, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for the healing that He
Hmm.
gave to me in those situations, because, He kept me around for some reason. I'm assuming I've got some more to do here, but I
Sure.
want to start the discussion with that by saying both my situations were pretty serious, and the way I responded was even surprising to my doctors, and to the point where, my current doctors with my most recent cancer call me a unicorn, because they're like, what happened with you just doesn't happen. It's like,
So when you said responded, you mean the way you responded physically, or the way you mentally prepared or responded,
um
or both?
no, I would say the unicorn part is that, let's just talk first about my most recent cancer, which was prostate cancer.
Hmm.
When they diagnosed me, it was not my entire prostate was involved, as well as basically my entire pelvic region.
Oh
Cancer
wow.
was everywhere. It was in my
Huh.
bones. It was in my lymph nodes,
Really?
everything. So the prognosis was not good, and they had to proceed with a lot of heavy duty chemo and things like that. I think their mode, my doctor's mode, was to say, okay, how can we beat this back enough to extend this guy's life and try to give him a handful more good years and quality of life? They started my treatment. I'm a Christian, had my church praying for me, everything like that. I went in for my first PET scan halfway through the treatment. There was no sign of cancer in my
Oh
body.
wow.
It was completely gone. And nobody, including my oncologist, expected that to happen.
No kidding. Wow.
So that's why they call me a unicorn. They're like, don't read anything online or anything, because nothing you're going to read online applies to you. Like, what
Sure.
happened with you doesn't happen. Like,
Huh.
nothing you're going to read applies to you.
Now,
So
what was the first cancer? The first cancer was
the first cancer happened when I was 30 years old, and it was actually in my large intestine. So they consider it colon cancer, but it was really like or
okay.
bowel cancer. It was really in my large intestine. And that was what they call stage 3B, which meant that it had perforated outside of the large intestine and was in my lymph nodes as well.
Okay.
And that was also, a lot of chemo and things like that. And I came out of that, thank God. Here we are, 25 years later, and I just had my checkup with that about a month ago, and that was all clean. Still, that cancer was sort of a hereditary cancer.
Okay.
It was, not to bore you with the details, but there's something called Lynch syndrome, which is actually a genetic thing that predisposes you to a certain type of cancer.
Okay.
And so my first cancer was more hereditary. My last cancer, they uh, through process of genetic sequencing and sequencing the tumor and everything like that, think that it was me. I was in the first Gulf War. Spent 6 years in the Navy. I was in the
Okay.
first Gulf War, and the burn pits and everything like that were going on over there. They assume that my second cancer is a result of my
No
exposure
kidding.
in
Okay.
the Gulf War.
Okay. So you've beaten two cancers two separate times. One 20 some years ago, one as recent as
3 years ago.
2022, 3 years ago. How does that how does that impact your outlook on business, on life? Tell me more about how you use your battle with cancer in your everyday life.
Um, the short answer is it changes everything.
Hmm.
I try to tell people that if it's possible to explain the way it changes your mindset, it's actually a blessing, because it makes you begin to think about the end of your life while you're in the middle or early
Right.
stage of your life. You start to understand the things that are really important and the things that are really going to matter in your life way before you probably start to way before you might start to understand those things without some of those trials. So I think, when you get that call from your doctor, um, you know, all the small things like the fact that your car got a door ding and that this is going on, and just the randomness of every day that's irritation, stress, whatever, 98% of that stuff just falls to the floor, and it's not
Sure.
important at all.
Right.
And the only thing that matters is can, I gain my health. And if you're concerned about not regaining your health, how can I use whatever time I have left to invest in my family, friends, people like
Sure.
that? So once you go through something like that, and if you go through it twice, like I have, I'm a stubborn learner. So I guess I had to go through it twice to really,
Right.
to
Right.
really learn. But I think once you go through something like that, not that you're not concerned, not that you don't give 100%, not that things don't matter, but you're able to put things in perspective
Sure.
much
Yep.
better. I love cars. I've always owned nice cars, and I used to really be anal about, you know, the car being well taken care of, and just used to bother me anytime anything happened. And I still love cars, but now when something happens, I'm much more like, I've got my health, my family
Hmm.
and friends and
Right.
myself are healthy. That's
Yep.
just a piece of metal. I wish
Yep.
it wouldn't have happened. I'm not saying I
Mhm.
don't care. I wish it
Right.
wouldn't have
Right.
happened, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important, you
I
know?
think you nailed it. It's perspective. It's, you've gotten through two major hurdles in life. And when a problem comes up, when it has to do with business or in life, you can just look at it and say, you know what? I've been through this. I've been through harder things, more difficult. The perspective helps you kind of get past it before you get frustrated. And, we were talking offline, I had skin cancer a few times, and, it wasn't major, but it was still cancer. And, when you get that diagnosis, you kind of like, you feel defeated. You feel like, oh, you know, this is terrible. My life is awful. What do I do? But then, when you come out on the other side of that, you look at other things that you used to stress about with a new lens.
Yep.
And
That's the
it's,
perfect word. The
yeah.
perfect word, I think, is lens, because it changes the lens that you look at the world through.
Hmm.
Like,
Yep.
you're still looking at the world, you're still living in the world. It's
Right.
just that when you look at it, you see it completely differently.
Yep. And I appreciate you being candid about this. I know that, this is something that you've talked about before. We've got articles on the website about your battle with cancer, and I know it means a lot to you, to share your story. I've shared a few stories, in the year that I've been here with, people who have battled cancer. We have somebody internally, Brian Hovey, who, he had breast cancer. He was very, very open about, a man's perspective on dealing with breast cancer. And we've had other people in the industry talk about their battles with
Yeah.
skin cancer, breast cancer. So and I think everyone sort of comes out of that with like we just talked about, a new lens on life, new lens on business, and the things that you used to stress about and used to get down about, they don't seem as bad as they used to
Well,
before this battle.
and you start thinking about, you start thinking about, I hate to use the word because it sounds, maybe some people might think it's a little cheesy or whatever, but you start thinking about legacy. You start
Hmm.
thinking about, like, what am I here for? Like, what do I want to be remembered for? Um, you know, and I think if you've been in business long enough, and um, you've attained some level of success where you've made some money, you pretty quickly figure out that that's not it. Like,
Right. Yeah.
like, you reach a point where you're like, okay, it can't just be about acquiring more money, because that's not
Hmm.
very fulfilling, especially once you get. There was a study done, which I was kind of surprised about, but they talked about, like, once people's basic, their primary needs are met, and it was like at $70,000 of income, your satisfaction with more income doesn't dramatically increase.
Right.
Like, once
Right.
your core
Hmm. Needs
needs
are
are
taken
done.
care of. Yeah. Yep.
So, you really start looking at work in your life and start to say, my motivation for what I'm doing can't just be about making another hundred thousand
Mhm.
dollars because that begins to be not as fulfilling. I mean, obviously, we all need to have a job, we all need to have a roof over our heads, we all need to make
Mhm.
a living, but once you attain a certain level, like that, at least for me, I mean, some people might argue with me about that, but for me, my work's got to have a higher purpose than just acquiring more money. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I love about iMagnet is we work with a lot of smaller companies. And, I've worked in big situations with big clients. And the thing I love about working with smaller clients is, let's say they're new to business, they're struggling, their top line revenues $225,000 a year. By the time they pay rent and everything like that, it's a struggle. And you start working with them, and within a couple of years, a year, 2 years, their top line revenue is $500,000.
Mm.
Like, some people in the industry might be like, my top line revenue is multiple times that. What's the big deal? But it's like, I mean, my satisfaction and where my purpose comes from is that changes that person's life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difference between them maybe being able to send their kid to college or not,
Right.
or
Right.
being able to buy a house or not. And
Mm-hmm.
I love being part of that. Like, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to say, okay, what was my purpose in life? And be able to look at situations and be like, you know, that know that I've helped some people and that help has actually had a meaningful impact on their life.
Right.
Um,
Right.
if I work for a big company and we increase their sales from 5 million to 5.5 million, which is a $500,000 increase, it's less of a big deal to them than it is to increase that smaller person's income.
Sure.
Does that, I mean,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
sure,
Totally.
they're happy about it. Don't I
Right.
mean they certainly are
But
happy
it's
about the increase, but
yeah.
they're they're operating from a point of already doing well, and
Right.
it's just a matter of degrees of how well they're going to do versus somebody being like, I'm barely making my bills. I can't
Right.
even think about owning a house. My kids are getting older. How am I going to put them through
Sure.
college? To be able to help them increase their business enough to where those things become, a possibility for them.
Right. And that's where you get the satisfaction from. I mean, not increasing
Yep.
the bottom line for a bigger company, but when you see the smaller companies certainly thrive,
Yeah.
and that's where you take away the
And we
satisfaction.
work with bigger companies too, and I certainly love
Yeah.
working with them as well. But when we start talking about legacy and what I'm going to think about, hopefully many, many years from now, as my life comes to a close, is what I'm going to think about is the fact that I did some good and I helped people. I'm not
Hmm.
going to think, and that to me is more important. In fact, this industry has been very good for me. I mean, a lot of people ask me why I spend so much energy and stuff on Window Film Pros, the consumer side of it. And I started that as kind of like, this industry has been so good for me. I wanted in some way, shape, or form to give back. And one of
Hmm.
the things that's been consistently talked about in the 25 plus years I've been in the industry is lack of consumer awareness about our
Right.
products. You and I
Right.
both said before we were in the industry, other
Didn't
than
know.
getting a car tinted, we didn't know anything about it.
Right. Right.
I think that's very true still today, 25 years later, is that a lot of people outside of getting their car tinted, I'd still say consumer awareness is probably less than 5%. If you
Yeah.
randomly polled 100 people and asked them if they know what window film is and what it could do, I'd be surprised if you got more than 5 people that could
I agree.
actually.
I agree.
So, you know, I sort of looked at like what could I give back to the industry? And I said, I learned how to tint early on and I could put down a piece of film, but I'm never going to really give back to the industry by demonstrating some, you know, great installation technique or,
Sure.
training or anything like that. That's not the way I can give back. I'm not going to give back by creating an awesome new tool like maybe Jordan and Nick over at Fusion Tools came up
Right.
with that they're like, hey, that really changed the way the industry worked. That's really not how I could give back. But I do understand sales and marketing and how to make a movement. So if I can, in my own way, with help from our partners and everything like that, take consumer awareness and just move that needle a little bit, it helps the whole industry.
Sure.
And so the
Sure.
way I'm so interested in Window Film Pros is it's my way of saying to an industry that's been very good to me, how can I give back and move the needle in a little bit of a way and something that I know how to do. I can't move the needle as an installer. I can't move the needle
Right.
as a innovator of tools or anything like that, but I can do something here. And
Sure.
that goes right back to legacy. Like when I'm retired from this industry, and I want to look back and say I made a difference in
Hmm.
some small way, even if it's a
Yeah.
small way. And it can't just be about making more money. I mean,
Right.
that just for somebody that's young, I mean, I was the same way. That sounds stupid. I mean, all of us want to make more money, but like I said, as you get to a little bit more mature in your career and you're making a certain amount of money, you, at least for me, I quickly realized that's not worth pursuing. It's
Yeah.
We need it, we need money, but that can't be the
You're
focus of
only,
your
yeah.
pursuit.
Awesome.
You know.
Well said, Patrick. Before we go, now you're going to WFCT.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing there?
Sure. Well, we'll have an iMagnet booth, and we'll
Mhm.
be giving away the Window Film Pros T-shirts that kind of
Okay.
become a tradition at the WFCT. So, really cool shirt this year that we came up with, and we give them away for free every year. We bring hundreds of shirts, and we just give them all away for free. So we will have an iMagnet booth. We'll have the Window Film Pros T-shirts to give away, and then I'm also speaking on AI and how to use
Okay.
AI for how to begin utilizing AI for your small business. And I'm speaking on that on, I believe it's Thursday morning. So
Maybe I'll come and cover that. I'd
yeah,
love to hear more about what you got to say. That sounds like an awesome class. I think, you mentioned it earlier in this conversation about, jumping onto the AI train before it's going too fast. And I think this is a perfect opportunity. So if you're going to WFCT, check out Patrick's class. Now, Patrick, if anyone wants to get hold of you, how can they do so?
the easiest way is our website is I like EYE magnet MAGNET, and then short for management MGT. So imagnetmgt.com. My email is just Patric with no K, Patric at imagnetmgt.com. That's
Or you
probably
just,
the
yeah, or you just Google iMagnet management, which is what I did first thing that comes up in Google. So that's great. Patrick, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time
yeah.
today.
I
Everyone's
appreciate you
busy.
having me on. I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's super important for people in the industry to stories to be shared and perspective. I mean,
Absolutely.
um, I think if people in the industry realize that we're all in this together instead of like looking at it like for me to win, that other person has to lose or vice versa.
Right.
Look at it like if we all work together, we can attain more. Our industry is still very small and it's still the consumer awareness is very small. So, it's not a net zero game. We can
Yeah.
all win together. And I
Yeah.
think as people start to look at it and say, hey, that person over there isn't my competitor, work, and begin working. So I love the fact that you share the story, share people that are
Mhm.
doing things in the industry, because I think it helps people see, and I look at the keynote this year, one of the keynotes at the thing, and I'm going to give a shout out to Tommy Silva from TNT.
Yep.
When I was brand new into the industry, Tommy still is a legend, but he was even a legend back then. I mean, he was moving more film than like anybody. He'd win Dealer of the Year for Lumar every year. And, instead of having a cocky attitude and thinking he was all that, Tommy has always been willing to give me the time of day and to spend time with me and to invest in me. And I've always looked at guys like that, like he had accomplished enough to where he could afford to be a little bit like, look at me.
Yeah.
He's never been that way. He's
Yeah.
still not that way. And I look at that and I'm like, as somebody that went before me that is like really gave a great example of
Sure.
Tommy's always been open to talk to people about what he's
Hmm.
doing to be successful, things like that. He's never been like, hey, I've got this secret sauce behind the curtain that I'm not
Right.
going to share with anybody. And so if you ask me somebody in the industry that's really an inspiration to me, Tommy Silver would be that person. And I'm so happy that he's in the Window Film Hall of Fame, and
Yep.
I'm so happy that he's doing a big keynote this year. So
Yeah, and I'll be interviewing him, and I'm really excited to share his story with everyone. It's an amazing story. I know a lot about Tommy just from the last couple weeks. kind of researching him and just learning about what he's done. In since 1977, I believe he started, and he's still going strong.
And even the
And
way that he transferred the company to his employee. I
right, to
mean,
his
the
employees.
guys.
Yeah,
I mean, like I
yeah,
said, I mean, anybody that is looking for somebody to model their career and life in this
right.
industry, you'd be hard pressed to find a better example than
Yep.
Tommy Silva.
Awesome. And on that, I'm gonna leave you at this now. I want you to just kind of give a. You got any other shout outs you want to give before we go? I know
I mean,
Tommy Silva's a big one.
yeah, I
Anyone
mean,
else?
I think that anybody like the shout outs I would give are to, um, Eric and David at Tint Wiz. I think, what they've done for the industry, how much they've given back to the industry. It's almost unbelievable how much they've invested in helping the industry. And I look at Eric as not only a friend, Eric and David, not only as a friend, but a mentor, in the industry. So I would say, those guys, and there's so many great people in the industry. You guys are inducting Jeff Plummer into the Window Film
Mhm.
Hall of Fame this year. Jeff's a great guy. He's always had time to, talk to me and things like that as well. So, I don't want to, obviously I'm leaving a ton of people out, but I like, you know, definitely those people, like I said, that I mentioned. I would say, Eric was so giving, and he's invested so much in the industry. I think sometimes people approach him like, what's the game? Like, what am I missing? Like, why?
Right.
It's almost like they question his motives, because it's like he can't just be doing this for altruistic things. And I think, my time I've spent with him and David has shown me that, I mean, he's one of those people that genuinely just is like willing to invest in the industry for the benefit
Mm,
of it. So all the love to Eric and David from Tint Wiz as well.
awesome. Well, Patrick, again, thank you for your time and have a great weekend. We'll see you
All
next
right.
time
Sounds
on
great. Thanks for
the
having
Window
me. Hope
Film.
to see a
Yep.
bunch of you guys at WFCT.
Yes. Take care.
All right. Take care.